Our grade 10's today's lessons is the gradient or the slope of a line segment. Now, what is gradient? Gradient measures the steepness and the direction of a line. So here you can see this is quite steep and it's going uphill. This is so steep but it's going downhill. This is vertical and that's horizontal. Reminds of the horizon. So what's the gradient formula of a straight line? And you're familiar with this when you did the straight line in algebra, but let's go through it again. And when you first did it, you spoke about rise over run. So when you determine the gradient of any straight line, you need 2 points. Because the rise is really the difference in the two y values of those 2 points, and the run, which is the horizontal here, is really the difference in the two x values. So gradient is defined as the rise over the run, or the vertical over the horizontal, which is really, as I said, the difference in the y values over the difference in the x values. So the gradient, we write M for gradient, and the subscript here, AB, just denotes the name of the line. The gradient of AB is YB minus YA over XB minus XA. In other words, the difference in the two y coordinates over the corresponding difference in the two x coordinates. Now someone did ask me, does the order matter? No, it doesn't matter. So you could actually say YA minus YB. But then you must say XA minus XB. So what order does matter is this order. If you start with that y value, then you must start with its corresponding x value. So that's the definition for gradient. The change in the y over the corresponding change in the x values. Let's look at a few examples. Determine the gradient of line in the sketch below. So there we have 2 points. 2, 3 is the 1 point and 6, 4 the other point. So gradient, it's the change in the y values over the corresponding change in the x values. So if I consider this as my YB, then it's 4 minus 3. And I start with 4, so I must start with that x value, 6 minus 2. So 4 minus 3 is 1, and 6 minus 2 is 4. So the gradient of this line is a quarter. That means for every 1 step up, I must go 4 steps across. As I said earlier on, the order doesn't matter. So if I decided that this was my YB, in other words, if I say 3 minus 4, then I must say 2 minus 6. So if I do say 3 minus 4, I get negative 1, and 2 minus 6, negative 4, which still gives me a quarter. So it doesn't matter which one you start with first. But if you start with this y value, then I must start with that x value. So the gradient of that line is a quarter. Note, it's sloping up. It has a positive gradient. And that is not very steep. It's a quarter of the gradient. In example 2, it says calculate the gradients of the lines in the given sketch. So let's look at the line AB. And here we can see this direction, it's sloping down. Okay, you can think of it going downhill. But let's work out the gradient. So again, here I write down my gradient formula. It's the gradient of AB. There's the gradient formula. So I'm saying 1 YB minus YA, 1 minus 3 over 6 minus 2, which gives you negative 2 over 4, which gives you negative half. Note, the gradient is negative. -1/2. So when the line slopes downwards, when we're going downhill, the gradient is negative. Let's look at the line CD. Again, the change in the two y values over the change in the two x values. So YD is 3 minus -3. That's the y value of C, over the x value of D minus the x value of C. So it's -1 minus -1. So here we've got 3 plus 3, which is 6, and of course -1 plus 1 is 0. So that gradient is undefined. Can you see it's a vertical line? And for any vertical line, the gradient is going to be undefined. Why? Because there is no change in the x values. Notice the x values are the same. So that's how you can recognize a vertical line. The x coordinates are the same, so there's no change in the x values, hence the 0 on the denominator. So the gradient of a vertical line is undefined. Note again, the x values are the same. Let's look at EF. EF, the gradient of EF, change in the y of the corresponding change in the x values. So it's going to be 1 minus 1. And of course the numerator is going to be 0. The denominator is 2 minus -5, which is 7. And 0 over any number is 0. Note, the gradient of a horizontal line is 0. Remember, gradient means slope. There is no slope to this line. And any horizontal line has a gradient of 0. How do I know the line is horizontal if I don't have a drawing? I can see that the y values are exactly the same. There is no change in the y values. Let's look at example 3. Here, no sketch is given, but they say determine the gradient of the line passing through the points G1 and -1 and H5 and -4. Now you can actually make a sketch. The sketch is not the answer, but it will verify whether your answer is correct or not. So we have the change in the two y values, so it's YH minus YG over XH minus XG. So it's -4 subtract -1 over 5 minus 1. So here we have -4 plus 1 gives you -3. And 5 minus 1 is 4. So the gradient of the line joining these 2 points is -3 over 4. So what have we learned today? We've learned the gradient formula, which is the change in the y over the corresponding change in the x, and that the line can have a positive gradient, it can have a negative gradient, it can have a gradient which is undefined, a vertical line, and we can have a gradient which is 0, a horizontal line.